going from my left, working our way alphabetically, let's introduce our panelists. Mike Bromelkamp is a partner at Olson Thielen. Mike, wave to everyone. Yeah, how about that?
I don't recognize anybody in here.
Anyway, Lauren O'Brien is president and CEO of B&F Fastener Supply, and Lauren also was the Upsize Business Builder winner this year, 2016. Lauren. Tom Siders is partner at L. Harris Partners. Micah Thor, Chief Operating Officer of Tech Guru. And Dean Willer, partner at Winthrop and Weinstein. Again, thank you all for being here today. I have a variety of different things that we're going to go through, but the intention of an event like this is to offer this up as a learning opportunity for you. So at any point in time, if anybody has a question or wants to delve into a particular topic in greater detail, please let me know, and we'll get to it to the extent we can. All right, so now that you've met everybody, let's learn a little bit about how they fit into the discussion of managing rapid growth for your business. Panelists, will you please each share a little bit about your bio, your firm, and the background and why you're here today? Let's start with Mike.
Everybody here knows that I have nothing to say ever, so we'll try and keep it short. Olson Thielen's a well-established full-service CPA firm based here in the Twin Cities. We work with entrepreneurs all over the upper Midwest. We work with startups to family-owned private businesses through succession and through exit planning. I'm a graduate of St. John's University. I have a MBA from Carlson School in Information Systems. I'm active with a number of boards and economic development organizations across the state of Minnesota, and I am also a consummate Gopher basketball fan. Wes, put your hand up and wave. We have great conferences about what's going on with the Gophers. I am predicting they will win 2 games at the Big Ten tournament in March, and I'll be in the first row for both of them. My responsibilities at my firm revolve around business valuation, audit, tax planning, and business development. So I've got a lot of perspectives when I'm working with family-owned businesses on how I believe that rapid growth should be handled. And I'm really excited to be on the days with my 4 compatriots up here, and I'm looking forward to the day. So thanks to Upsize and Club Entrepreneur for putting this together.
And I would also say that Mike Bromelkamp and Olson Thielen has been a sponsor of Club Entrepreneur since 2009. So I'm very grateful to Mike and his firm for his support over the years. Lauren, tell us a little bit about you and your firm.
Hi, my name is Lauren O'Brien. I'm the president and CEO of B&F Fastener Supply. If I was going to show you my resume, it'd be pretty short. I've been selling nuts and bolts my whole career, 30 years. Very exciting business, I can tell you that. No, our company, we founded our company in 1988 with 3 employees. I originally had a 50% business partner that we started with in 1988, and we started with a little over 1,000 square feet of warehouse in St. Anthony, northeast Minneapolis, that area. During that time, first few years we grew. It was a small growth spurt. We added a few employees here and there. And then from that point on, we added a branch in the mid-1990s. But to this point today, we've grown from small roots of 3 people to a company with 14 branch locations in the upper Midwest. We have our distribution and corporate headquarters is in Ramsey. That's a 65,000 square foot facility. Company-wide, we're warehousing about 200 to 225,000 square feet of inventory. We've grown to about 180 employees, and we continue on that growth pattern. Back in 2010, we were fortunate enough to win the Upsize Growth Challenge with a plan that we put forward at that time with a double-digit growth plan to add to our business. And we followed through on that plan over the last 6 years, and we were fortunate enough to win the 2016 Business Builder Award from Upsize. We're very proud of that, and we have a fantastic team. I do have my son and my daughter and my 2 upper management VPs with us today. they've been a big part of where we're at today. Thank you.
And Lauren, I met Lauren and his team about a year ago and went out and visited them. It is a very impressive team, wonderful company, and have done a fabulous job transitioning in their succession planning. And we'll hear a little bit about more of that today. All right, Tom Siders is partner at L. Harris Partners. Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
I am a recovering CPA. I spent 36 years with a top 5 accounting firm, my last 11 on the firm's management team. I failed at early retirement. My wife kicked me out of the house after a couple of weeks. Said, you vacuumed the carpet 13 out of 14 days, you need to go find something to do. So I'm a founding member of L. Harris Partners. Some guys and gals that I used to work with, we decided to start our own consulting firm. And our entire firm is focused on helping business owners grow value, just like this guy has, and plan and execute the inevitable exit from the business. Everyone will eventually exit their business, vertically or horizontally. Everyone will leave their business. There's about a dozen of us. We're pretty seasoned veterans, very experienced. I know that sounds like we're all old, but we're not. I'm the oldest at 63. And although that bothers me sometimes, it's only 18 when I convert it to Celsius, so it makes me feel much better. We come from a variety of backgrounds: public accounting, wealth management, private equity, investment banking. We know how businesses are built, we know how they're grown and sold, and so what we do is help business owners along that journey. Our services are strategic and financial, although we do offer a variety of specialty tax services, particularly international, as businesses begin to look to expand internationally. We have significant experience in that area. We do startups to mature industry companies. We focus on closely held, privately owned businesses. And our projects tend to last a long time. One of our first clients 5 years ago is still a client today, and we're still there 3 or 4 days a month working with them along this journey.
Great. And I've done a couple of projects with Tom's firm over the last couple of years, and one of his associates there is somebody who I've done work with over a number of years. And so anyway, they have a good firm, they can add value. And then I was also thinking, if you wanted to get even younger, Tom, you can go by dog years, and it's only 9. So, all right, Micah Thor is Chief Operating Officer at Tech Guru. Micah.
Hi, everyone. How's lunch? I'm looking forward to having lunch later. They had said we couldn't eat until we finished our panel. That's our incentive. So if I fall into my microphone at some point, just throw some bread at me. I'll be all right. So we are an outsourced IT department, is how I like to describe us. We cover everything that's got buttons and lights. We have virtual CIO services for small to mid-sized businesses who don't have somebody in that seat, and then services all the way down to the boots on the ground that are crawling under your desk, untangling wires, and solving your day-to-day computer issues. Our company's had consistent growth since its inception, and then rapid growth in the last 3 years. We grew 50% on average each year. During that time, leading up to that time, we had built systems and processes so that when we finally got some sales to hit, we'd be able to consistently grow without upsetting our current client base and frustrating all of our employees. So happy to say that we've gone through 150% growth rate with hardly losing any employees or clients, having our best retention rate of both of those things during that period of time. We've always had a thoughtful approach to how we treat our employees and how we treat our clients. We dub ourselves the caring technology company, and made that a really, really strong main core value that we try and live every day from the leadership down. So a couple of crazy things that we did to embody that was we started bringing in groceries for the staff, paying for company cars, paying for internet, paying for everything that our great CPA, John, would tell us was okay to do pre-tax. So excited to be here on this panel with these esteemed gentlemen and share some of the things that we've learned through that process.
And when Micah says they're the caring technology company, they are, because I'm on the phone often late at night or on the weekends with Dan Moshe, the founder of the business. And so they do care, and Dan returns his phone calls even on the weekends and late at night, and I appreciate that very much. So thanks for joining us, Micah. Dean, tell us a little bit about you and your firm.
So my name is Dean Willer. I'm a corporate attorney. I've been doing it for 12 years. Our firm is Winthrop & Weinstein. We office in the Capella Tower. We're a full-service law firm. We have 120-some lawyers. Our firm's a little bit of a different animal. We're about 36 years old, so relatively young by large firm standards. Some of that is because we've, over the last 35 years, have grown from 6 attorneys and grown that 20-fold. We've done that not because we're the smartest guys in the room by any means, but because of our clients. And our clients we're startup businesses to, larger companies like, for example, Bremer Bank. But the majority of our bread and butter, the people that we spend our time with, are CEOs, CFOs of closely held mid-sized companies to startup companies that have grown up with the firm. So we spend the majority of our time literally on the phone with people, and I would say talking about their business issues, giving them as much business advice as legal advice. We think of ourselves as business attorneys. I have an MBA in finance, and I attribute that in no small part to why they gave me my job. It's a lot of times we're the one or two of the primary outside consultants or experts that the people rely on, and so sometimes it's their own detriment and sometimes it's their advantage. But we hope we give them solid sage wisdom. And being a 12-year attorney, the majority of my clients are experiencing or hope to experience either rapid growth or steady growth. Which is great. I couldn't ask for a better opportunity. It's so much fun to spend every day talking to someone whose life you hopefully are improving.
Dean and I have also interacted together on projects in the past, and then they have been an ongoing sponsor of Upsize Magazine. So thanks, Dean, for joining us today, and thank you for your support. So that leads us to the question part. Again, just to remind everyone, I have some stuff here. I'll go through it, but this is intended to be your event. So if someone has a question and they want to chime in, please raise your hand. So the first question I'm going to ask the entire panel is give us some common characteristics of businesses that you have seen manage their growth well. And anybody who wants to kick it off, go ahead.
Do we have to go in alphabetical order?
No.
Let's go ahead and height.
In my experience, it's effective planning. I carry around a quote from Sir John Harvey Jones. He was a British CEO and then had a show on the British Broadcasting Network called Troubleshooter, where he helped troubled businesses. He said planning is an unnatural process. It's much more fun to do something. The best thing about not planning is that failure comes as a complete surprise, rather than being preceded by a period of worry and depression. So most successful growing businesses have a pretty effective planning process, so they know where they want to go and they know what it's going to take to get there. They build an effective management team, and as I told both of my kids, if you're thinking about buying a house, buy one that's a little bit more than you really think you can afford, because you'll grow into it. And that's the same with a management team in a rapidly growing business. Stretch a little bit, get the right people in place, and then have solid processes and procedures so that the business will run without the owner having to look over everybody's shoulder. I would suggest even a small business use an outside board. It's a different perspective. And then the owner has to learn how to let go. How is that going for you?
Let them have it.
Anyway, that's the characteristics I've seen of successful, fast-growing businesses.
Thanks, Tom.
And I would dovetail off what Tom says, that one of the things you really want to plan for is cash, particularly in a growing business. As you start to grow and you become profitable and you bring in clients, what you don't realize is that consumes cash. Your cash becomes receivables, and cash becomes inventory, and you have to hold more of it if you're in an inventory business. If you're in a receivables business, it starts to build up. And you can quickly find yourself in a position where you are doing very, very well, but you don't have cash to pay for things. And then you start making unfortunate choices or necessary choices, but with unfortunate results, like holding off on paying vendors, and then they stretch you out, and then you can't have the same access to products, and then your cost of capital goes up. So within that planning process, think about cash, because by the time you don't want to be in a cash position where you need money. You want to be in a position where you're planning for the need of money, and so you can start either raising funds or managing your business accordingly so that it's not a surprise to you, it's not a shock to you, and you're not looking at your employees someday explaining why you don't have their paycheck.
I'll jump in next. One word for us would probably be transparency. I've sat in some of these CEO roundtables before, and when I explain to them how transparent we are with our financials to our employees, that comes to a shock to some people. But it's hard to pay managers on the bottom line if they don't know how you get to a bottom line. And they know exactly what I make, they know what our truck drivers make, and what every expense adds up to. And they manage that bottom line as good as I do. We have a management team that's been with the company for many, many years. They know how I operate, and I know how they operate. And the transparency of showing the employees the financials and maybe teaching them how to look at that and what their effect on what they do every day can make on that bottom line, that's one word for us that's working, is transparency.
Great, thank you.
I want to compliment Dean on taking all of the comments off of my piece of paper here. Spoken like a real accountant.
Thank you.
And I want to mirror his comments. Cash is king. Cash is king. Cash is king. You got to have your eye on the prize. You got to figure out where you're at, because if you ain't got it, you can't go anywhere with it. Let me extend that a little bit further, though, that you got to understand what your value drivers are. One of the biggest problems that business owners have, or entrepreneurs have, is that they're going to start a business, and they all know why they're getting into the business, but nobody ever talks about what the exit's going to look like. They really don't know what their value drivers are. They really just want to know they want to do this business, they want to operate, they want to get to their customers, they want to enhance their intellectual capital. And you really got to know why you're doing what you're doing. Do you want to operate this business for 25 years and turn it over to your children? Do you want to operate it for 5 years and have a cash event? Do you want to go public? I don't know that we say that in this room very often, because I don't know many companies that are doing that. But certainly there are opportunities as baby boomers are getting ready toward retirement, that there are going to be these kinds of liquidity events. But I just wanted to reinforce what Dean said about cash, and I wanted to talk about keeping your eye on the prize. Know what your value drivers are, know why you're in business. Get your culture right. I think I appreciate what Lauren said. Delegate and guide. Don't do it all yourself. Get your culture right. If transparency is important to you, you got to do it all the time. You just can't do it when it's convenient. You want to educate and empower the people that are on your team, or you're not going to get to where you want to go.
A word that I would add is alignment. There's a great book, I'm blanking on the author's name, called True Alignment. And it talks about companies like Apple, who have taken this concept and this strategy and a message and translated that all the way down to the people that greet you when you walk in the door to their store. They're very, very intentional about who they hire. It takes something ridiculous like 6 or 9 in-person interviews with the entire staff of the store in order to get a job there. But I think everybody who's been to an Apple store would agree it's a unique experience, and those people are some of the most passionate employees you'll ever meet, especially working a crappy, retail job that, isn't always the funnest place to be. So that's something that we've tried to embody after I met the author of the book and read it, is how do we communicate effectively to everyone who's working in the company what is it that drives us, gets us up every day, that we're trying to put out into the universe, that hey, if you share this sort of philosophy and this kind of feeling with us, we're going to be a great fit to work together. And then make sure that when you're hiring people, they're going to continue to deliver that message and embody that core value that you've got. So alignment.
Great, thanks, Micah. So if you look back over your careers and experiences at various businesses and with clients and your own company, what would you say was the smartest move that you've seen a rapidly growing company do?
In my case, until I talked to Lauren right before we started speaking, it was a client who turned down business. Great opportunity to take a fast-growing business and just explode it with growth. And his team really wanted to do it, and he said, no, it'll outstrip our cash. I'll have to go to the bank. It's going to stress our infrastructure. And you know what? If they want to do business with us, they'll still be around for us to go sell them some business down the road, but we're going to do this right. But I would love to use your example if you'd like to.
Well, excuse me, for us, I actually have a different example. For us, it's more about managing the balance sheet. And during the economic hard times in 2008, 2009, I mean, the banks tightened the ropes for a lot of companies. Luckily, going into that, we had opened, stupidest move if there's a stupid move on here, opening 4 branches in 2008 was one of them. But we were debt-free. It took us 20 years to get to being debt-free, but we were debt-free in 2008. And for some reason, it didn't feel right to be debt-free. So we opened branches, and then again, we owed banks money. So I don't know if that's just part of being an owner, that it didn't feel right to be debt-free, but.
Too comfortable.
Yeah, it was comfortable. Well, we were complacent, and that's why we opened up 4 branches. But at that time, the banks had tightened, so we looked at other banks, and it made me realize that it was a good move to split our business between banks. We had all of our business with one bank at the time, and there were other banks out there that wanted to do business with us. And actually, Beth had introduced us to that bank. And then we ended up leaving the bank we were with for 20-some years, and now we split the business between 2 banks because we have a solid balance sheet and there's enough for both of them. That was my move.
What he told me before we started to speak was that he kind of put a halt on opening new branches until they got their infrastructure in place that could handle the expansion, which
Yeah,
is
when we were overloaded at one of our branches. Yeah.
The example I have is building the ark before the flood. You know, when times are good and you've got cash and you're growing rapidly, you're not, you know, being comfortable, just like you were saying, but looking, all right, what's the next horizon for us? What financing can we get now that we're in better shape? And it's stockpile cash, build the war chest, and look for the next big thing to take us over that next heap, whether it's 10 million, 20 million, so on. But not, you know, when times are good, treating them like they're bad and staying real sharp.
I guess my example would be to be really nimble and be flexible and be thoughtful about what the future looks like. Planning is very important, but you don't have to stick to the plan if circumstances change. So I have a very good client, and this was music to my ears. They basically came to the conclusion that it's a little harder to win business because the area that they're in, the clients are very sticky with their existing vendors. It's hard to move. So they basically decided, well, rather than continue along this path, we'll go out and acquire other companies, which I love because I'm an M&A lawyer, right? So that's how we get paid. And they can start developing, and rather than pull these clients away and winning them by, you know, either cutting price or adding additional expensive capabilities, they basically just started buying up either similar size or smaller, in one case larger companies that were in a little bit of, you know, stress, a little bit of distress, but they brought over these great suites of clients, and what they were able to do is grow through acquisition. And it was really a pivot for them because they basically were, prior to that point, continuing to develop, continuing to grow just by adding clients. But by making the switch, it was a cultural change for them, and they grew. When I started working with them, they had about $9 million in revenue, and this year they had 150. So by able to do that, they were able to change their philosophy and continue to grow just in a way that probably seemed a little not traditional to them, you know, a year before they started along that path.
Good, thanks.
In terms of a smartest move, I want to emphasize that I believe that every business is unique. You can't be cookie cutter as you're trying to do this stuff, but the smartest move that I see successful entrepreneurs make is to make sure that they surround themselves with an advisory team that can fill in their weaknesses and complement their strengths. If you're good at operations, maybe you don't need a whole lot of help, but you probably are going to need help on the sales and distribution side. You're probably going to need help on the human resources side. You're probably going to have to think about how you're going to organize your business and leverage whatever financial power you're able to bring to the table. Most entrepreneurs that are starting up businesses don't typically have that deep net worth to go to the bank and say, write me a check. Typically, you are going to be losing out on the ability to bring financial resources in on an unlimited basis to your business. Now, maybe that's what you're for, but other than that, you know.
I paid him to say that.
Yeah. And I'm going to collect too. You need to be able to determine what the needs are. You can't do it all yourself. We all believe that we know everything. Or at least that's what my wife tells me. But the fact is that you do have to decide what strengths you need to strengthen and what weaknesses you need to bear up, and then go after it. And like I said in the answer to the first question, keep your eye on the prize.
Great, thank you. So again, if you kind of look back over your various experiences, what obstacles to corporate growth have you seen most often?
Well, I'll start. Probably the biggest one is when people don't understand their weaknesses, either their weaknesses in their business or their personal weaknesses. So to dovetail a little bit off of what has been brought up here, if somebody is good at something, they often believe they're good at everything, right? That's a common issue in my profession, and I'm sure the medical profession and others, right? Because I'm really smart, I can do everything. Well, it often is a good idea to make some real sober assessments about what you're good at and what you're not good at, and what you're not good at, have someone else do. Because if you're not good at doing something, it's not going to get done well. It's not going to get done efficiently. You can muddle through when you don't have the resources, but as you start to develop those resources, I think adding capacity becomes, and adding qualified personnel to assist you in those spaces becomes really key.
I kind of half dovetail on that and say that technology, having a technology that enables you to deliver on a process within your organization, keep things consistent, and gain efficiencies and better profitability as a result of not having to hire somebody because you've got software that is taking the role of an unnecessary position away for perpetuity, so that as you grow, you don't need to add 2, 3, 4 more people to do that job once upon a time, finding ways to get that technology to do that for you instead.
Obstacles to growth a lot of times are a lack of focus by the business. They try to be all things to all people. So instead of being best in class at what they're really good at, they try to be too many things. And that basically dilutes resources, it dilutes time, and then they're struggling trying to figure out why they're not growing.
I think our biggest obstacle will be as we look into the future and when we transition over to the new ownership or the next generation of our family is how does that next generation take it to the next level? I don't know if I can teach my children how to make decisions and things like that. They're learning on their own. They have a solid management team that helps them and they're helping them along the way. But when you look at, we have a really good footprint on where we're going to be in the next 5 to 7 years, but that's going to max us out in the geographic area that we cover. So from that point on, where do we go from there? I really don't have a desire to be a part of that decision. My decision to start the transition over to the next generation was within 5 to 7 years. I really want to be out of it. With the market for our company right now to be sold, I get calls every week for companies that are interested in buying us. I've had direct competitors wanting to buy our company out. But the decision to turn it over to the next generation was a family decision, but what they need to look forward to and the obstacles that they're going to run into is, I was a big part of how we got to where we are today with the people that I have. How are they going to do it the 10 years out from that point on? Because it's going to be a struggle for them to find people to come in. I mean, there isn't a high school kid in the state of Minnesota that says they want to go to work for a nut and bolt company when they graduate. If they are, send them my way, but we're in an industry where we have to take people and mold them to our industry. We do a lot of promoting within our company. The gentleman over there, Todd Boone, he's been with my company for 25 plus years, started as a driver. He delivered parts. I mean, that's the way we built our company. So the obstacle, and I've told my kids this before, it's making business decisions as an owner, because I've thrown the darts at the wall for 20-some years. It's going to be their turn here real soon.
Got a little bit of a non-traditional answer for you. Obstacles to success in business really boil down to just a couple subjective measures, and one of them is listening. I find very difficult to believe that entrepreneurs do a great job all the time with this. And this is listening to customer, this is listening to employee, this is listening to channels. Vendors want your business. They'll tell you anything they need to tell you in order to get your business, but you got to listen to what their real needs are so that you can have win-wins. Employees want a job. If they're not invested in the company, they're there to get their paycheck. And I realize that that's kind of cynical, but the fact is that you have to listen to what their needs are. If you want to build a culture that's going to get them to support what you're trying to get done, you're going to need to do that. But the most important thing might be listening to the customer, giving them what they want instead of giving them what you think they want. I realize that is a subjective measure, but I really firmly believe in that.
Great, thank you. Again, if anybody has anything, chime in. All right, so dovetailing off of the obstacles to growth, and we talked a little bit earlier about kind of smartest moves you've seen. Let's go the other direction and say, what's the biggest mistake or mistakes that you have seen or experienced yourself with growing businesses?
I'm going to go back to what Dean started with on cash. Underestimating what your resource requirements are going to be, loosening up the lock on the treasure chest, not developing relationships with the bank when times are good, because when times go bad, they're not there for you, not engaging people that actually understand what finance is about. John, do we think we need to do tax compliance? You got to listen to this kind of stuff, and these are the mistakes that are made. Tax compliance can cause you tremendous tax flow problems, particularly if you don't find out about it until the beginning of the year. Testing the assumptions that you've made on your decisions. You make a decision and then you don't ever go back and check out why you made that decision and how you're measuring your success in that decision. We can open Pandora's box, but I think we'll let the rest of the group participate here.
I think employing the same strategy that got you to 10 million to try and get you to 100 million or 1 million to 10 million, whatever that stretch may be. Every single department, I think, from marketing, sales, HR, operations, needs to evolve as you reach that milestone. We noticed it when we hit a million. We're like, okay, well, that was fun, but there's no way that we can do it the same way and get to 10. So we brought in consultants at that time to give us some marketing strategies and question our approach to everything that we're doing. The concept of bringing in the Bobs from Office Space. We brought in the Bobs, and the Bobs told us a lot of things that we already knew and reinforced those decisions, but then challenged us in other areas. And there was, as a headstrong young entrepreneur, it was kind of tough for me and Dan to take some of that, but we've had a chance to digest it now, and excited to employ some of this stuff to take us to 10 million. So that's one of the things that I've seen, though, in our client base as well, people that just are flat on their growth. When I ask a few more questions about what's causing it, it's pretty clear that they haven't brought in the Bobs or something similar to that to challenge their strategy to get them to that next level.
So I'll try to give you an example that's germane to my subject matter. A lot of times when people are trying to raise money or when they're putting a business together, they're very, they look at this far out in front of them and they say, well, I need this money, so I'm going to give this person a certain amount of rights that they're asking for, without ever asking themselves, well, what if they don't agree? So I was literally on a call this morning with a company that was looking to buy another one, and the primary reason the seller was selling was because they brought in an investor with debt, and it was and they had all sorts of rights, and that investor has been very difficult to work with, and they have no way out. And that, believe it or not, happens more often than you'd expect. I'm working with another company who's raising money, and they're in the process of, same kind of deal. Somebody's going to give them $3 million, and they're super excited about it, but they want 10 or 12 things that they can't do without to get this investor's consent. And you ask yourself, well, what if they don't agree? What if you get there and you want to sell the company and they don't? Or what if you get there and you want to borrow money or raise additional capital from somebody else and they won't agree? And the desire to get the money is so important because it's so pressing. You have to have it now. But they'll often concede on some of those things, and then 2 to 10 years later, we're having a conversation about what to do now. And I've literally represented a investor in a company that everybody got wiped out because they gave a venture capital fund the right to consent to a sale. And when they got to the sale, the venture capital company said no, and my guys had basically put in most of the new money as debt, and they couldn't do anything, and so the company just went under. And everybody got wiped out because the venture company said basically pay me or I won't consent. And so when you start to put these things together, these pieces together, you really got to look farther out and say, okay, I get that this is important. Can I agree to it? Can I not? If I do agree to it, is there a what else? Is there an or else? And I think thinking of those things at the time you're doing it is really, really critical.
Well, I would reiterate what everybody said here, but so cash is king. You got to change the way you do things. Yours kind of hit home with not a client, but a company that I knew. The chase for cash, the chase for investment, it's a huge opportunity. I got to have this money, and basically the owner lost his moral compass. And he eventually ended up in jail for failure to pay payroll taxes, for not paying the employee health insurance, for not taking the 401k withholding and put it in it, with the trustee, because cash had become so tight, and yet there was this huge opportunity right around the corner. So knowing where you're going and sticking to who you are is pretty important.
I'm going to actually change it up a little bit, Rick, because I've made too many mistakes to cover that part of it. We'd be here till dinner time, and that'd cost you. I want to cover the biggest mistake that I didn't make, and Mike and Dean and Tom might actually be able to help me out on this. But back when we originally started, I had a 50-50 business partner, Steve, and I was 26 years old, and Steve was 32 years old. And I don't know how many 26 and 32-year-olds do buy-sell agreements that are funded with life insurance, but we did. We relied on our accountant and our attorney for that advice. Unfortunately, 4 years later, Steve died. 1992. We'd only been in business for 4 years. Without having that buy-sell in place with life insurance, we would be a shell of who we are today. It would have cost me an additional 10 years to pay off what I would have owed his family. I would have been business partners with his parents because Steve was a single man. And that was probably the biggest event that I've ever been through with the company since that day. But my advice on that is that was a mistake. Insurance was cheap when I was 26 years old. And to have that pay off and pay off the debt on the company when Steve died, I'm a proponent for it, and I'm sure you run into a lot of people that we're not doing that. So
I'm going to add that I think the numbers that I've experienced are maybe 1 in 10 do that. And the one that does it because the dad or senior business partner insisted that they do it and did it over their own objections. Control is an issue too. The 50-50 thing, don't do 50-50. I don't accept clients that are 50-50. They're too much trouble. They can't make a decision. They don't survive. They don't get to where they want to go to. I know there are people in here that may, and I'm sure we all have people that.
My litigation group loves 50-50.
we made decisions by flipping a coin.
They're not even fun for me. I mean, we do litigation support for guys like you. And the problem is that I have to do a valuation report based on 50-50, and I got all these control discounts flying around. It's just a lot easier to maintain control, don't give equity away for no reason. But the funded by sell agreement, I can't emphasize that enough. I think that's great that you brought up the point, Lauren, because I don't think 1 in 10 actually get it done because they think it's an expense they can do without, and it's absolutely indispensable. We got a,
got a question in regards to mistakes and whatnot. Kind of talked about cash is king, really getting to the point of liquidity. I have a question around business credit, and from the experience of the panel up here, you say it's better to, say, go all in with one banking relationship, or would it be better to, in a sense, maybe have 3 to 4 guys that you can call upon and say, hey, if I have a liquidity opportunity, where am I going to go?
I actually think your banker could be one of your most valuable outside consultants. So I'm a big proponent of having a great relationship with a banker who will keep me out of trouble because it's their money. Tell me another advisor that a business would have that has more at risk than your banker. I mean, your lawyer has fees at risk, but hey, if you go away, they'll find another client. The bank actually has an investment in your business. So I would use your banker.
Yeah, I think it's hard for smaller companies to have too many useful banking relationships. I mean, you can try, but for the most part, you're going to have a relationship with a bank, and I think it's really important on the front end that when you start to shop for a banker, you think about that. It's not just well, this guy's going to give me the loan for 12 and a half bips less than this other guy, so I'll go this way. I mean, if you find somebody, I mean, you're right, they are an investor in your company, so find somebody that adds value and can deliver it. I mean, there's people in this room that can help you, and that certainly will tell you that it really comes down to what's this relationship, because this is somebody you're going to have to stick with, and when things go real bad, you want to pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, I need this, and you want them to say, you know what, I trust you and I'm going to go to bat for you.
I'd like to qualify that just a stitch, because you guys both used the word investor. The banker is not your partner in your business. They are a vendor that sells you money. And you have to meet their technical requirements in this regulatory deal. You're not going to get everything you always want. But you do have to have a good relationship with that person. You do have to have, they have to believe that you are a good manager of your assets, and that you are going to put the money to use to do good things. But the first time things go upside down, a good relationship can save you from that problem. The second time you may not be as lucky, because they are not your partner. They may be willing to invest their energy in your business, but they're not there as an equity partner. I don't know if you guys are mad at me for saying that. but-
No, I agree with you, but they still are. They have more at risk than anyone else. The worst thing you could do is surprise your banker frequently with bad news.
Bankers, one of the things that I talk to a lot of my clients about is that I'm going to tell you what you need to hear from me. And you may not like it, and you may shoot the messenger, and so be it. The bankers are like that. They are going to tell you exactly what you need to hear, maybe not as timely as you'd like to have it, but they will come back and tell you what you need to hear. And that's why when we talk about them being an important advisor, or maybe the most important advisor, I agree with that.
One of the mistakes we made early on was not having a diversified source of funding for our business. So when 2008 hit, we were only a few years old, like just out of college, and revenue way south of $1 million. So to all the banks that we were talking about, we were just a credit risk that they had assessed. And so we had to try and diversify as much as possible after 2008 to get as much funding as possible, because we didn't look like a great person to lend money to at the time. And now that we are healthy, we're going through that process again, because we haven't. This isn't a solicitation for bankers to come and talk to me afterwards, but we haven't ever had that relationship. I may be a little jaded from my personal experience, but we've never had that situation where we called a banker and said, hey, you know us, we're good for it, and they delivered. So I think I would echo what was just said about how they're not an investor, they're not a partner, they're a bank, and therefore you should kind of treat the relationship like that. I could be proven wrong someday, but so far that's been our experience as a small business.
I might even add on that, there are a lot of great bankers in this town. This is not a matter of saying that you can't find money when you need it, but you got to go out and ask for it, and you have to cultivate these relationships in advance of the time you got to make the ask. But there are a lot of good sources of credit in this town, but you just have to know where to look for them.
All right, a question up here?
Lauren, could you
The transparency on the financials?
Yeah, let me just repeat the question so everybody heard it. The question was about the transparency on the financials. When was that implemented? How did it work? And so if you didn't hear that in the back, Lauren?
Boy, it goes back a long ways. We've always done it. I mean, not probably back to the 90s, but when we put people on a pay program that was based on the bottom line, I thought it was only fair that they know what they're getting paid on. And so we've always, it's gone back many years. I don't know, Todd, somebody over there help me out here. It's been a long time, and it helps because when I can look at when I manage a balance sheet, I know where our inventory is at. If I know that's high, then I can talk to them about that. But on the expense side, they know if we're running high on some expenses or our cost of goods are off, they're going to adjust that. And they're paid accordingly for that. So hopefully that answered your question.
Answer the question, Ashley?
Yeah, I think I think if anything, an owner would be uncomfortable with it, more so than the employees. I think when I first started it, and what we have is a middle management group and an upper management group, and I think trying to teach some of the people how to look at financials was maybe an obstacle for some of them, so I needed to step back. I'm not a great teacher. My kids will tell you that right now. I'm a horrible teacher. I just expect things to get done, and that's kind of the way it's been for 25 years. But it was a group thing where we went through the P&Ls line by line and said, this is the effect you as a branch manager can have on the bottom line. This is what a salesperson has. The salesperson needs to grow the top line, and the branch manager needs to grow the bottom line. So it's worked well.
Matt?
I'd like to continue on that a little bit. Did you ever talk about like ESOP? I mean, we're talking about the management team being so key, being a sole owner of an organization going like that. Did you guys ever pick around ESOPs and key ideas for retention for your key guys? And then the second thing that I wanted to ask you guys about is when you grow a business very quickly, likely it comes from one or two major accounts. And the banks are very familiar with the term I'm new, like it's called account concentration. And how much of your time do you spend trying to diversify the company versus going to the well where you know sales is not a problem?
Great question. A couple of them. It's funny because when you mentioned the customer concentration, going into 2008 and forward, that was a main goal for us to get out of that. We were top heavy with 4 or 5 accounts. We lost that business, and it's made us a stronger company. Our top customer is less than 3% of our business. The banks look at our receivables every month, and they know what the concentration of risk is. And we've spread that out over thousands of customers now. And it's been a goal and a strategy of ours to do that. When we look at our business model, if we have a branch that's solely relying on one customer, that's not healthy for us. So we've done a really good job of picking up new business.
And on the exit too, I've sold a couple companies that have really high customer concentration this year, like close to 75, 80. And it limits the buyers. Some private equity companies will go after you, but at a reduced valuation, but more often than not, you really become a candidate only to a strategic buyer who's gonna pay you where you need to be. And because they can pick the business up and they're instantly diversified, right? Whereas if somebody else comes in, levers you up, and you lose or has some significant issues with one customer, now your deal just goes really badly. And so fundamentally, if you can diversify, obviously if you can have the discipline to do so, it can help you in the exit.
Getting back to your question on the ESOP, I never really looked at it as an option. We have a longtime competitor that's an ESOP, and I never felt that was going to be a good fit for us. Our management team has been with us for many, many years, and we treat our employees well. And I think when we started to talk about moving it to the next generation, it was either I'm out in a certain number of years and I'm out. And we talked it over with my wife and our family, and it was just a better option to keep this thing going. It was a better option for our employees. Our employees bought into the idea because they knew the alternative was to sell. I had never had any thoughts at all of turning it into an ESOP.
I want to add on the ESOP question that in my experience, ESOPs are great for the seller, and they're not so good for the surviving company because the administrative burdens that get placed upon you are just greater than they have to be. We do a lot of ESOP valuation work at our place, and the value drivers just can't be there. You do have an opportunity. Some of the strengths are you're able to incent the continuing management team, but where they go with that, what's your exit strategy for an ESOP? It's very difficult for another company to come in and buy an ESOP, and I can name 5 examples here in the Twin Cities where sales fell through because they couldn't figure out a way for the strategic buyer to acquire the ESOP. What was the first question?
Account concentration.
On the concentration deal, you have to understand that if you have high degree of concentration, if that's the value of your business, that's the value of your business. But the problem is that upon a sale, you're going to have to structure that thing differently. Nobody's going to come to you with a pile of cash and do a 100% cash buyout. It's probably going to be bought out over time, and that's going to significantly depress the present value of cash flow as a result of that. And I think every business that I've ever been associated with always has the strategy to become less concentrated. But you know, if you're selling to Apple Computer and you happen to be doing parts that you're the only maker that you've got, you might have them on the others. They might have to stay in the bed with you as well. So it kind of goes to the uniqueness of the business. But for the most part, you want to stay away from it because it hurts you currently in operations, and it will hurt you in the future on sale.
And if you're thinking about getting out of business and selling, and 80% of your business is with one customer, you aren't going to get paid up front. It'll be over time. There'll be a warranty on it, which means you think you're getting out of business, but you actually have to stay for 5 years to make sure that you don't lose that big account. So,
And sign a non-compete and
Yep.
take less than what you deserve. Does that answer that?
Circling back, I want to touch base on the moral compass question. It was something that came up and just kind of I wrote it down and been sitting here thinking about it. Does anybody in the audience know Buddy Ruvelson? Passed now, but he was a venture capitalist, and I did a couple of panels a number of years back, grumpy old VCs, and Buddy was on a couple of those panels, and he told a lot of stories about where people lost their moral compass. So I just kind of want to bring that back up as a topic, kind of see what people either have had in that, from an experience standpoint, things they might do to try to keep track of conflicts of interest. So just, I don't know, take the topic of moral compass and just go with it a little bit.
that's why I always recommend even a closely held business have a couple of outside board members. It's 2 more sets of consciences on, are we doing the right thing for the company?
Well, as a lawyer, I usually recuse myself when it comes to a moral compass question. But, you know, the funny thing is you know, I guess my experience, and I think you even see this with some larger problems. I usually see that when things like this happen, when bad things happen, they seem to happen incrementally. It's well, I'll just keep the payroll tax back this week, but the next week I'm going to pay it, right? And then it's 2 weeks, and then it's a month, and then it's 6 months, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a $390,000 liability or something like that. And it's all incremental. It's often for good intention, and then all of a sudden it's not, and then you're trying to hide it, and then you're trying to make up for it, and then it becomes a series of ifs. If this happens, then. If this happens, then. And you know, sometimes you're not telling your banker, and then it gets worse, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So it's not always as somebody sitting down to say, well, you know what, I should commit fraud today. A lot of times it's just incremental, and I think if you have people that can kind of serve as a moral check, if you do rely on people like that, if you have employees who you know probably can look over your shoulder and say, hey, don't do that. You know, get them involved, get advisors involved, get outside board members involved, and don't do the little things wrong. Do the little things right, and do the little things right every time. And make sure that the people you invest with do the little things right, and I think you can avoid a lot of those problems snowballing.
Go ahead, Mike.
The moral compass can go in a lot of different ways. I'm going to give it to you from a forensic perspective. It's something that we do a lot of. I think the statistics are showing that 85% of American businesses are going to be touched by fraud of some sort in the first few years of their existence. It's not just about you as an owner, for example. It's about you as a leader of an employee group, somebody that's dealing with vendors and dealing with your customers. My first job, a matter of fact, I started at Arthur Andersen. My first job out of Arthur Andersen was to run a internal audit department for a well-known Fortune 1000 company here in the Twin Cities, and the reason that they brought me in was because they had lost their moral compass, and that they had discovered that fraud was, maybe the word isn't rampant, but it was very close to being rampant. And a lot of times it doesn't get disclosed in the papers. A lot of times you don't know what the cost to your business is, but I can tell you there's nothing good that happens when you don't keep that compass in place. If your customers don't believe in you and believe that you're honest with them and doing the right thing, your ability to grow your business is going to be significantly dampened. If your employees don't believe that you're telling them the truth, your ability to have the resources to operate are going to be significantly put down. Having said that, being involved here in the Twin Cities in terms of some of the organizations that recognize strong organizations with strong ethics, I think we live in a good place in the country. I have, I got brothers in other states who can't believe how poor the business economies are. But it still happens, and one of the reasons I've got a job is we're doing a lot of forensic work because there's a lot of this junk going on. The problem is we sign a non-disclosure agreement and we can't talk to anybody about it. I can't even give you examples.
All right, thank you.
Is that negative and cynical enough?
No, that's all good.
I'm going to try to lighten it up for you, Mike.
I was more surprised, Michael, that somebody brought in Arthur Andersen to help find their moral compass. that was a low blow, I thought, for a few minutes before I said it, but then said it.
Moral compass, boy, I can sit up here and say that we've had bad employees that have done bad things, and I think probably everybody in this room has run across that at some time or another. As a business owner, and at the top of the food chain and with the management team, we do our best to do the right things. We do business the right way. We take care of our customers. We take care of our employees, but it's never going to be 100% that the employee's going to be happy, and they're going to do things that they're not supposed to do. Now, I wish I could police every one of them. We've had issues with employees. We take care of that right away, and in fact, it's a trickle-down effect. We handle that type of thing immediately, and it shows by what we do, what our actions are, and it's an example to the other employees that we don't put up with bad business decisions.
I should even add on that our firm does provide whistleblower services. So if you have an organization that doesn't have those kinds of abilities to give your employees an opportunity to call somebody on doing something wrong, you should consider doing that. Not necessarily with us, because we kind of do it in a specialized fashion, but there has to be a way for your employees to feel comfortable disclosing this stuff, because everybody knows that when something's going on, it's very difficult to hide this stuff. But if nobody's willing to come up because their job is at risk, or this is a good friend, or she's a grandmother, or for whatever stupid reason that might not be disclosed, you have to give people the opportunity to have a channel to get the information to you so that you can act on it.
I have no moral compass, so. No, back to the alignment thing, though. I think the leadership needs to set the tone, provide the example, but then also have your sub leaders, your managers, and your team leads and things like that. Subscribing to the same philosophies and having checks and balances in place so that things don't happen while you're not around and not looking. And then when those things do happen, they're dealt with consistently and timely to avoid, demoralizing effect of, if so-and-so did it, then it's okay for me to do it too. That's very cancerous and can cause a lot of problems quickly. I'm thankful that we haven't had those, but We're very, very conscious of other companies. As the IT guys, we get to hear about a lot of the dirt that goes on inside of companies, and it's been nice because it gives us an opportunity in our meetings to talk about that particular issue that came across our desks and how we would handle that at our company, and then give people the opportunity to ask questions. The other thing I've noticed, we have mostly millennials working at our company. They feed on conversation about, you know, what's going on inside of their head and issues that are coming across our service desk each day. We have basically 15 minutes of one of our meetings dedicated to empathy exercises to understand, like, why is it that this older generation is talking to you in this condescending or angry tone. And so we have, you know, these people try and understand, okay, where are they coming from, you know, from like an anthropology perspective.
No, it's because you use three-letter acronyms that none of us understand.
It's easy. It's easy. Watch this. Yeah.
So are there specific
And I
age
finally
categories
learned
we're talking
Control,
about
Alt,
here?
Delete, so, you know, I mean.
Are you busy tomorrow morning? Can you come and talk to my team?
A fish rots from the head down. So if you're doing things and bragging about it, like I screwed the IRS last year, and, let's charge that customer, you know, more than we really proposed to charge them because I think we can get away with it. You shouldn't be surprised when your employees begin to start thinking, well, that stuff's okay, so why can't I pocket this or steal that? So.
Lois?
Well, marriage is 50-50, but all the guys in the room know that's just on paper.
I was going to say, that's not true.
50-50, and we're talking about rapid growth and then the discussion about how things need to change to do the rapid growth in your culture, your operation, and your process. So the question goes to how at the very beginning, as you are putting your team together, do you think about structuring it, and what advice do you have about getting to the bottom of everybody's thought process as to where they want this company to grow? Do we really want it to go from our entrepreneurial, proper, closely knit operation into something that starts to take off? Who wants to bail at that point? How does that shake out in those initial partnership talks?
Sure.
Those kinds of issues.
Sure.
Well, 50-50 is sometimes unavoidable. So the most important thing is if you are going to do 50-50, that you do have a well-written buy-sell agreement so that when you don't agree, you can split apart. But given beyond that, it only takes that 51% to set the course for the company. And if you read there's a Jim Collins book, you got to get the right people on the bus. Sometimes somebody's going to get to the point where they're going to say, I don't want to be a part of a $50 million business. I didn't sign up for this. Well, then it's time for them to get off the bus and let somebody get on that can have that shared vision.
Their skill set is critical. How do you plan at the beginning for, whoops, if this takes off and you went out the door and you're carrying this critical skill set, we don't have a bandwidth.
I guess I'd say, Lois, that there are multiple ways to establish relationships with resources. If you've got a critical component and they're good technical, for example, employment agreement, non-competes, incentive programs. A lot of this is changing as those of us who are older, baby boomers, and negative all the time, and talking down to the group.
Poor IT guys.
Boy, I have a lot of empathy for the IT guys because I'm kind of one myself, but there are ways to get around that. And understand, we're trying to give you sound bites to take home. This 50-50 thing, my advice is if you absolutely had to do 50-50, put something in that well-written agreement that you have with your partner and say, this is how we're going to make a decision if we got to break a tie. It could be a coin flip. Drive a car, something so that you can make decisions. I've had two large companies here in the Twin Cities that actually had to shut down because they couldn't make a decision. One was put all the brick on TCF Stadium. they couldn't figure out how to sign agreements with all their distributors, so their sales guy ran away with all their distributors and basically they went from 18 million in revenue to 800,000. They're now defunct, so I can talk about that. 50-50. It is what it is. Tom was exactly right. Right people on the bus. You got to talk about structuring on the front end. What works? But I usually say somebody's got to be driving the bus. And my preference, if I'm the entrepreneur, I want to drive the bus. I want to stay in control. But there are ways, there are ways to structure that stuff, and they're all unique. I mean, you can talk to your business attorney, and your business attorney is going to say, hey, what's unique about your business? What do you want to do? There is an interesting entity here in Minnesota now called a public benefit corporation, and I'm working with some of those. That's pretty interesting because they don't have a profit motive. But they've understood how to structure those, and they got the legislation passed to put it out there. And it's a very powerful, non-economic reporting that goes on there. And I think you're going to see that grow over time. Does that answer what you're looking for?
Anybody else?
Tom, you mentioned about the board. The roles and responsibilities between the board and a very strong leadership. What, best practice, where is the board, you said?
Oh, for an outside board?
Yeah, for an outside board. Just give us an indication.
In any corporation, there's a board of directors. The board of directors is involved in setting strategy and policy, and management's responsible for executing. And typically in a big corporation, there are a couple of members of management on the board. In a closely held business, somebody's going to own the majority control of the business. They have to open themselves up to the opinions of others, because we can't all know all things about everything. So having the outside board meet even quarterly to look at the direction of the company, to hold me accountable for here's where we're headed, this is where we're taking our firm, and you need to be held accountable sometimes. So I'm a big supporter of an outside board member or two. They don't get to override the majority owner, but it's much more of an advisory role. And hopefully it's somebody that has a background in your industry or type of business so that they can also provide some of that expertise.
And if you're going to do it, use it, right? I mean, don't put people on and then keep them in the dark and meet once every 6 months and hand them the information you want to see. I mean, you don't have to do it. So if you're going to do it, you might as well get some value from those people and have people that actually, will give you some true feedback. Some people that they could truly care less if they're on your board or not. They're just there to help you and engage them.
All right. On the board thing, one thing that also comes to mind is there's two types of boards. There's a fiduciary board and an advisory board. So if you didn't want to go all the way to having a fiduciary board and having those folks have voting rights, you can assemble an advisory board with a couple of different folks with some various backgrounds, so they technically don't have the power to make you do something, but if you've gathered smart people around the table, hopefully they can help you sort through some of the issues that you might have. Any other questions? All right, so couple of things. We got about 10 minutes or so. For those of you who haven't been here before, try to do a hard stop at 1. Again, we have the room as long as anybody wants to stay. But as we kind of aim towards the finish line here, panelists, if you each wanted to touch on maybe one thing to remember to avoid, and then we'll come back and have one follow-up question after that. So one thing that you want folks to remember to avoid.
Mine would probably be, not all business is good business. I think Tom touched on that earlier. Excuse me. In the industrial and construction supply business, we can sell this part to anybody. Any fasteners that are holding your chairs together, but it has to be a good fit for our company, for the amount of inventory that we need to carry for that company, how they turn the receivables, or how fast they pay us. So with the sales staff, I think we're at 25 to 27 salespeople out there that want to sell everything. We can't be that supplier to everybody. We need to stick with what we're good at, and we need to look at each customer to make sure that they're good business for our company.
I guess I'll just say, you just caught it. Keep your eye on the prize, do what you do well. Do it well consistently, and do it well with a team around you to make sure that your weaknesses are being supported and your strengths are being enhanced. Keeping the eye on the prize is very difficult, and I understand that, but you don't always want to be trucked into having a fiduciary board, but having good advisors around you is critical.
I would avoid being an ostrich, right? Entrepreneurs have so many things pulling them in 100 different directions. If you have problems, don't stick your head in your sand. Don't stick your head in the sand. If you've done a plan and it's not working out, don't say it's too hard. Address the big issues, think strategically, and don't avoid things like the small problem because you don't want to deal with it. We're all Minnesotan. We're all going to be passive aggressive. We're all going to push it off to later, right? Don't avoid those problems and address them as they come up.
Don't keep bad employees around.
You mean pures? Previously undetected recruiting errors? That's what I call it.
Yes. I take full responsibility for all my mishires. There's so many things that can go wrong with an employee, but when it is going wrong, it sucks to let them go, especially if they're key. Once you've done it a couple of times, it gets a little bit easier, but it's never a quick decision that you can make. But the faster you can make it, the better, the faster you can move on and find the right person to get into that seat.
I would say the one thing to avoid is spending 100% of your time working in the business and not spend any time working on it, which is why I'm a big supporter of an outside board. At least once a quarter, you have to take stock of what is it I've been doing, and are we headed in the right direction? And although I could fire these 2 board members, in an instant, but I do probably owe it to them to explain what's going on, and it's just a self-check.
Okay, and then last question, along those kind of same lines, if there was one thing that you would have the business owners take with them as something they should remember to do, what might that be? So we got an avoid question and a to-do question.
I'm going to do a cliche and say embrace technology. They seem a little self-serving, but once upon a time I went to a conference and I saw a picture of a dashboard, and this was like 8 years ago, so the word dashboard meant something on your car, not a business intelligence tool. And it was a picture of this guy with his feet up on the beach looking at a status bar that his company was kicking ass. And I was like, yeah, that's a pipe dream. That's never going to actually happen. Well, about a year or 2 years ago, we finally got our dashboard to work and give us metrics about financials, operations, and sales, where we could look at a single pane of glass or maybe 2 panes of glass and say, hey, things are looking good. I'm going to sleep well tonight. This technology is available to every type of business that's out there. It takes some investment to do it. I talk to 80% of my clients, and anytime I talk about a new piece of technology, I can just see their face cringe, like it's fingernails on the chalkboard, because they know what it's like to put a new piece of technology into a business. But if somebody comes to you and says, hey, here's a piece of technology that is going to radically improve the way that you do business, hear them out and consider a possibility that you could get to a point like we have, where I truly have a piece of or a screen that I can look at and say, wow, the service desk is really kicking ass today and sales is looking great. I'm going to go golfing.
Speaking of golf, it's drive for show and putt for dough. So when you leave here and go back to your business, just remember that it's revenue for show, but it's cash flow for dough. And we've all talked a lot about cash flow, but it is the most vital ingredient in your business.
Yeah, I don't know if I get anything that we haven't already added. You have to manage your cash flow. You have to keep an eye on it like a laser. If it's one thing, if it's the most important thing, it has to be, that we can give you, right? I mean, you have your secret sauce, but that we can give you, it'd be managed cash.
Mine is going to be very simple, and it's doing budgets every year. We're going through the process right now. Our management team does we have our management team do a set of budgets. Nicole and JJ, my son and daughter, they're doing a set of budgets. I do a set of budgets. I think there are probably a lot of people that think a budget is just throwing a revenue number out there. But when we do ours, we go through 300 to 350 expense accounts, and we look at those numbers, we analyze them, and we stick to those budgets. And if we don't hit those budgets at the end of the year, then we go back and figure out why. So it may seem very simple, but doing something like budgets for us is a huge help for us.
I like the analogy of putting for dough. That's right. All the ideas we've just shared with you are important. The one that I would come back with is probably a non-financial one. As an accountant, all I would tell you is make sure you're listening. You're listening intently. You're listening to the facts on your dashboard. You're listening to your employees. You're listening to your customers. And making sure that if you're going to be decisive about something, that you're doing it based on the facts and you're not doing it based on your personal emotion or some kind of imagination of what the world is like out there. You don't get many chances, and sometimes if you only make one big mistake, that's the end of it for you. If you make a lot of little mistakes, it may also be the end. But listening is something I think most of us find difficult, and you have to practice, but it does pay off in the long run, particularly if you're listening to your cash flow.
Thank you to our panelists.